Could you touch on how a winemaker decides what a wine should age? I mean, for example, well, if we leave it in oak an extra 6 months, it'll help it age. Or if we do this during the winemaking process, it'll help it be ready to drink now. I mean, how, if you could put it in layman's terms, how does a winemaker determine
Besides,
whether a wine is going to be ready to drink now or it should age? Or is that something they can manipulate in the process?
right. I'll say one thing, then I leave it to Darrell. Every wine and every winery is different. You know, it depends who's your winemaker. They're going to decide how long, what wood to use. Depends on the grape and where you are geographically and so on. Is also very good tipping points to add it to the other one, our main wine, because of course every wine that we make is different. But in Borro, which is the wine that is aged the most, is our most important one. It's a good question because the research of also the wood and the barrel behind that is very important. It's a good selling point because even if it's aged 18 months in French New Barrique, this is the only wine that goes into French new wood. Even so, it's a wine that when it's released, you can drink it. And I found that beautiful because the wine is meant to be drank. Yeah, our wine, like this one, you can keep it for 8, 10 years. It's gonna get even better. But the most important thing and most difficult, again, California is a good example, is that the wine is drinkable when you buy it. If it's not, and you have to invest 8 years, it shouldn't cost that much. Because then I have to invest 8 years, 10 years to wait, and drink it. Try a bottle with Borro Toscana, and you realize that the last release, which is like what we're serving tonight, 2016, which is, it's 97 point. Parker is beautiful. It's going to be fantastic for the next 10, 15 years. But if I open a bottle at a table and we drink a glass, it's enjoyable today. So to do that, in Borro, and again, it's different between one and the other, we use some very special barrique. They're called T5, and it's basically, to make it short, is a process. You can go and look it online, where we toast the barrel differently. So the very, very slow process, and that releases some chemicals that allow the wine to be way smoother and drinkable when you open it. But again, it's so different. I don't know what Darrell thinks.
I mean, when it comes to that question, I don't know. As Francesco's been talking, I've been trying to figure out a way to kind of put the answer in a concise, 2 or 3 bullet points. And that's difficult, but I'd probably say for ageability, a winemaker would be looking for at least 2 things. One is a higher acid level. That really is the backbone. That's what gives wife its longevity, but also tannin structure. That also adds to life structure, or to life longevity. And then there's also, this is where it gets tricky, because if you have high acid, high tannin, but your concentration of fruit is low, you can't age it that long. But you have a high acid, high tannin wine, and the reverse can happen too. So truly, it's a complex answer, and it can be difficult to achieve. And there are many ways to manipulate it, especially in California. I mean, you can add tannin powder to wines. You can acidify wine. So there are ways to get wood chips. So there are definitely ways that you can manipulate the wine, to answer your other question. But I would say, if I can, the shortest answer I can give is a balance between acidity, tannin, and fruit.
No, that's
is the key word. It's the balance.
Yes. No,
if the wine is balanced, it's going to be aged, it's going to be drinkable today, it's going to have all the elements that the wine needs to be appreciated.
No, that helps. So that brings me to one quick question. For the average consumer in the grocery store, if they're trying to find a wine that they can age, do you have any tips to give them? Like, oh, you want to look for this, or you want to look for that? What basic tips would you give the average person to determine I think this wine could age. I'm going to get this and let it age for several years.
I don't know if I have a good answer because there's not one short, easy answer. I mean, honestly, if given that complex of a question, usually my easiest response is to develop a relationship with your local wine merchant. Develop a relationship with them. That way they can better understand what you're looking for. And when you're dealing with a wine professional, they can guide you through that process. Again, because that question can be so complex, I don't know if I have a better answer than that.
My answer is a little more complicated, but that's what I like to do, and I visit many wineries all over the world for that, is, you're looking for a wine or a wine region where you can get a wine like that, high quality and something that will last, and you can put in your cellar. You have to go there, meet the winemaker, see what they do and how they do it. There's no other way. Because behind the bottle, there's a lot of little things attached to the bottle, but the truth is, where they source the grape. Like, we're a bottle estate, we're all organic. When you go there and you look around, you're like, oh wow, these people, they make not just the wine, they make a concept behind. And drinking it could be a very good wine to put in your cellar.
For wineries like Il Borro, where they allow nature to do its thing as opposed to making some cookie cutter type product, does the weather have any effect on the ageability of a wine? Like, oh, we got a lot of rainfall this year, so it can't age. Without going into too much detail, could you explain how the weather can or cannot affect the ageability of a wine?
If there's, to use your example, if there's too much rain in a vintage, think about any type of agriculture. When you're growing something and you have a really wet season, what happens to that water? The plants absorb that water and put that water into the fruit. So what happens to the fruit is you're diluting the amount of flavonoids, components, acidity, all the stuff you're looking for is becoming more and more diluted with the more and more water you're putting into the grape or whatever agriculture you're talking about.
Weather is essential.
Essential, absolutely. Critical.
Hours of sun in the day, how much water, what's underneath too, because there's a lot of channels, there's a lot of waters, there's a lot of things going on too. But just think, I think you live in Texas too. I mean, why can't you grow some good wines over here? It's just, it's too hot, and the humidity and the exposure also. How many hours a day, it's the grape exposed to the sun and so on.
But there was one question you talked about earlier about how to help customers identify a wine that can age. And I thought of another thing, a topic that I'd like to talk about that I talked a little bit early on, is probably a more important key that I would like to relay to customers is how do you pick a good wine? And that can be just as difficult or complex as a question, but it goes back to what I said earlier about it being estate-produced wine, estate-grown, estate-vinified, estate-bottled, where the winery controls the whole process. That really is your closest guarantee to getting a great bottle of wine every year.
Yes, well, yeah. When the winery has control over everything, the quality is going to be much better. Because you're doing everything. You're growing the grapes, you're harvesting the grapes, you're making the wine, you're bottling the wine. You are in control of every aspect. So anybody watching, you always want to look for estate bottle over non-estate bottle. Hey, again, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. So, ladies and gentlemen, signing off with the gentleman from Il Borro, and I'll let you know when I get the video posted. I'll send you a link.
Please.
Hi, Kurt. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Sell a lot of Il Borro.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ciao.
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 Bye.